What happens when freedom finally comes, but equality still doesn't? Quote for the evening is: education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom. And this was quoted by George Washington Carver. Good night, everyone. Welcome back to Weekly Black History Live with your host, Posha Malcolm. It's a pleasure seeing you tonight. We are we are going to continue our program, and as usual, I'll be having my chat on my left. So let me finish setting that up. Okay. Right. Almost done. Cannot be done before, it has to be done during. Here we go. All right, that's set up. And we are ready to begin. We are ready to begin. I'm here to explore some. I'm here to, let me see. Okay, great. You know, when you do this, you have to make sure everything is set up properly and we're ready to go. I'm Posha Malcolm, and I'm here to explore our shared history, the stories of endurance and transformation that continue to inspire and motivate. Before we begin, just a quick reminder, as usual, that this live is for educational and inspirational purposes. I'm learning alongside you. I may not pronounce every word or place, perfectly, but what matters is uncovering the history, the lessons, and inspiration behind these stories. Last week we explored life after the plantation, the first step into freedom after centuries of enslavement. But freedom was just the beginning. Tonight we are stepping into the Reconstruction era, a time of rebuilding, resistance, and re remarking remarkable Black leadership that emerged from the ashes of slavery. Now, this period, really based on research, began in 1865 and ended around 1900s. So, a new beginning. After emancipation, newly freed men and women sought to rebuild their lives. Yet progress force faced fierce backlash. So there were groups that retaliated. With all things that persons benefit from, they don't want to see it end, right? Reconstruction Reconstruction governments were met with violence. So, whatever organization, whichever government, you know, there was violence. The US government passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And the 13th Amendment included ending slavery. The 14th Amendment included granting citizenship. And the 15th Amendment included protecting voting rights. So now you could vote. But remember, there was just this thing about voting. You have to own property, right? And when persons were emancipated, some left with nothing at all, nothing. Education as empowerment. Schools became symbols of liberalization. Formerly enslaved people, they build houses, often starting classes in churches or under trees. And I remember my days there when I did early childhood education, first and second level with the government of Jamaica program, and persons used to have school for children, basic school children, actually on the steps of a neighbor. So all the children would come and they would sit on that step and they will be taught by that person, that lady that was there teaching them. So this was basically how they operated. So they built schools, and some of those schools were in churches. And even to this day, that I know, there are schools that are in churches, and they were also under trees. So anywhere that they could get, they were able to educate. And this was known as a means of empowerment. They had leaders like Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass, and others championed education as the path to true freedom. And until this day, they say that education gives you freedom, right? So it is something that has been there as a liberation from way back. I'm going to touch on one of the person, which is Frederick Douglass. If you check out my Black History shorts, you will find him. He was born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, and he was born February the 14th, 1818, and he passed on February the 20th, 1895. He was an American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. He was the most important leader of the movement for African American civil rights in the 19th century. Now, after he escaped from slavery in Maryland in 1838, Douglass became a national leader of the abolitionist movement in Massachusetts and New York, and gained fame for his oratory and incisive anti slavery writings. Accordingly, he was described by abolitionists in his time as a living counterexample to claims by supporters of slavery that enslaved people lack the intellectual capacity to function as independent American citizens. Northerners at the time found it hard to believe that such a great orator had once been enslaved. It was in response to this disbelief that Douglass wrote his first autobiography. So here we see where education played an important role in his life, and also to shift the view that enslaved people could not have that intellectual capacity. We are going to touch on political leadership emerges around this time, people giving that voice, but I'm not going to go in depth. During Reconstruction, more than 2,000 African Americans held public office, from local councils to the U.S. Congress. And figures like Hiram Revels, the first Black U.S. Senator, and also Blanche K. Bruce, redefined what leadership looked like in America. So Hiram, he was born on September the 27th, 1827, and he passed away January the 16th, 1901, and was an American Republican politician, minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and college administrator. Born free in Northern Carolina, he later lived and worked in Hawaii Ohio, sorry about that, where he voted before the Civil War. Elected by the Mississippi legislature to the United States Senate as a Republican to represent Mississippi in 1870 and 1871. During the Reconstruction era, he was the first African American to serve in either house of the U.S. Congress. And we also have Blanche. He was born on March the 1st, 1841, and died March the 17th, 1898. He was an American politician who represented Mississippi as a Republican in the United States from 1875 to 1881. Born into slavery in Prince Edward County, Virginia, he went on to become the first elected African American senator to serve a full term. We know that Hiram, also of the Mississippi, was the first African American to serve in the U.S. Senate, but was not able to complete a full term. So we have Bruce completing a full term, while Revels completed term was incomplete. And we have RJ. Thank you so much for joining. And he says, I Posha AME. I'm happy that you are here with us tonight. So we have been talking about the Reconstruction era, how education played a role at the beginning of this era, and also political leaders started emerging. And we said that there were 2,000 of those African Americans held public office. So your participation, as usual, is always welcome. And we're now moving on to economic struggles. So, welcome again, everyone, to the weekly Black History Live with your host, Posha Malcolm. I'm happy that each and every one of you are here with me. We have been talking about the Reconstruction era of Black history. So we move on to economic struggles. Despite newfound rights, many Black families were trapped in sharecropping, a system that kept them in cycles of debt and dependence. But others built businesses, newspapers, and mutual aid societies, laying the groundwork for future generations of Black enterprises. And we know that they were successful in their Black businesses. Then we now move on to, we are almost at the end because I want to keep it within a certain time frame of half an hour or less. Now we move on to faith, culture, and community. The Black church became the heart of community life, a place of worship, education, and activism. Spirituals, storytelling, and tradition help preserve hope and identity. So here we see faith, culture, and community help to preserve hope and identity. They were able to worship together, have that connection, and exhibit their culture and bonding together as a community. And even until this day, we still do the same. We worship together, we share our culture together, and we also bond as a community. And I think any community is structured this way. All right. So they were able to share their faith, their spiritual persuasion, their storytelling of their culture, where they're from, and what they used to hear their parents used to say to them. RJ says also a lot of Blacks in the South held on their ancestral faiths but mixed it with Christianity. I can understand that. Yes, I can understand that. as I said, the culture, what they were taught back then would have played a role. And even in Black culture now, we still embraces all of these three things: faith, culture, and community. They still play a role in our identity. And the last thing is legacy. It's always about legacy, what we're leaving behind, how far we have come and where we're at and what we are going to leave behind. Those who came through this era left us a blueprint of resilience and progress. And I would add to it faith, culture, and community. Faith, culture, and community, because those three are very important to a community's survival. That faith of encouragement, encouraging, that culture of passing on the education of what you have learned from your foreparents and what you have even learned in your era, and passing it to the next generation for them to add to that. And then community cell that have that platform for persons to come together and exhibit all these things. So it's very important that we maintain all of those. As usual, we are going to do our reflection in question and answer. And number one is, I just have four today. And number one is true or false. The 15th Amendment granted black men were the first to have that right. So black men the right to vote. And remember, they had to have property. They had to have certain requirements for them to be able to vote. And most persons didn't have land, they didn't have a business. But in this era, you had one and two of black people that were able to hold possession. So is that a true or is that a false? That the 15th Amendment granted black men the right to vote. Is that true or false? So RJ say truish because they were met with racial attacks. Yes, it is true that they came under strong violence. There were groups that they did not want to release that advantage that they had. So they didn't want black people to vote, to have that right to vote. So yes, it was at risk of their lives that they took this opportunity to vote. So they were risking a lot. But as we said before, that if they didn't have that to pass on, we wouldn't be able to even know persons once they reach the age of 18 are able to vote. And I think this is in any country, persons are able to vote. Right? Number two, so you got that right, RJ. Number two, who was the first African American US Senator? Who was the first African American US Senator? You can give me the first or the last name. If you don't get that right, I'll give another one pertaining to that same question. Drill Scott. Actually, it was Hiram Revels of, of Mississippi in 1870. So we had one that didn't complete their one that didn't complete their term and one that did complete their term. So the one that did complete their term was Blanche Booth. He was able to go 4 terms, while Hiram Revels did not get to complete his full term. I think he got sick, if I remember correctly. And then we have number 3, what system replaced slavery for many freed people, keeping them tied to plantations? What system replaced slavery for many freed people, keeping them tied to plantation? Sharecropping. Yes. So they had to do this because um, they weren't able to take on other. They didn't have land, they didn't have a business, they didn't have certain things to enable them to not go back to the fields. So they had to do these kind of system. So basically, sharecropping is, hold on. So basically, sharecropping is an agricultural system where a tenant farmer uses a landowner's land and receive a share of the crops produced in exchange for their labor. So they had to basically doing the same thing. They had to take care of the land for the owner, and then they were able to get part of it. Um, there's a system where you can lease a land, but I've not seen where you actually give your money or you give part of that. I'm trying to see if there's a system now in our society that applies this. I know you can lease a plot of land and work it, but you're not giving back. Okay, so that is sharecropping. So you got that, RJ. And the final question is, what role did the Black church play after emancipation? What role did the Black church play after emancipation? I think that's the last thing that I touched on. Second to last. What role did the Black church play after emancipation? And I said there were three things that, okay, RJ said it's brought the community together, yes, and brought people from different places together. It did. So it connected them with their faith, so they would worship together. It connected them with their culture, so each would share what they have learned from their ancestors, their parents before, and great grandparents while being enslaved. And they also, as you said, come together as a community. They were able to share and be in that atmosphere of family and togetherness. So faith, culture, and community became the center for them. And they use this to propel themselves through the Reconstruction era and help us to be where we are today, I must say. So we have come to the end. And I just want to say Reconstruction wasn't just about rebuilding a nation, it was about redefining freedom. Out of unimaginable hardship came educators, lawmakers, and dreamers who turned struggle into strength. And this is just a positive and encouraging and inspiring way to look at it, that out of these reconstruction periods, they were able to rise and become all these professions that before they wouldn't have been able to do. And now we can able to do several of these sometimes and so much more. So I want to encourage you that as we think about the profession that we are in, think about what we are doing, that it may be that our ancestors, as I think about our lineage, that we may have progressed, right? RJ says Reconstruction gave, let me see, gave birth to a new ethnicity, African American, or foundational Black Americans. Yes, so out of that persons who were enslaved in the US, we always say African American, and I would say I agree with you, right? Can't say the same for Jamaica, because Jamaica has been mixed and blend and all of that need, so we are out of many one people. But the majority of persons in Jamaica are from African descendants. All right, so their legacy reminds us that progress may pause, but it never stops. So we always continue to progress, to move to another state. And we have seen persons gone to the moon. We have seen persons invention. So we have accomplished a lot. The African American, the Caribbean people, all those who have been enslaved from African descendants, we know that it has been a long process, but it's ongoing, it never stops. Thank you for joining Weekly Black History Live with Posha Malcolm. If this story inspire you, share it with someone who loves learning and hit that subscribe button so you can continue uncovering our history one story at a time. And RJ says, Portia, I encourage you to watch the documentary called Summer of Souls. All right, Summer of Souls. Summer of Souls. Documentary. All right, I will, RJ. I will watch it. I just have an announcement that next week we have a guest. We'll be having a guest with us, and it promises to be great, excellent. And so I invite each and every one of you to tune in next week, Tuesday at this time at 9 p.m. for our weekly Black History Live. And I hope. Hi, Gia's World. Hello, my dear sister. Welcome. We're about to close our Black History Live. I would love for you to watch the replay. So Gia is another YouTuber and also a friend of mine. She's in Jamaica. Tune into her channel for local activities. And I say, and RJ says, Gia's World, hi. Yes. So thank you for tuning in, Gia's World. Thank you, RJ. And I will see you guys next week. Just want to say happy to be here. Wonderful. Wonderful. I will see you next week with my special, special guest. I cannot wait. Bye bye. Take care. Take care, everyone. Take care, everyone. Bye bye for tonight.